Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast, The Wire Remixed, Season 2, Episode 6, All Prologue. I'm your host, Cyril Gerald-Quinn. And as always, I'm joined by one Robert Sapp to discuss this highly anticipated show, episode, All Prologue. How you doing, Mr. Sapp?
Doing well. Excited to be talking about The Wire.
Been definitely looking forward to this episode for a while now. This was a signature episode in the series. This was a episode that to me was one of the top, I would say one of the top 10 episodes of the series that the series has ever had. Even Vulture liked this episode. Vulture had this episode ranked 14th all time.
Yeah.
Which if you've been following this program or this podcast, you know that is very high praise considering where Vulture has had most of these season 2 episodes ranked. It was directed by Steve Schill. You have the epigraph, "It don't matter if some fools say he different." That was by one D'angelo Barksdale. Prologue. You want to know what prologue is? Prologue is an event or action that leads to another event or situation, also used to give us information that advances the plot. I mean, you can't fit. I can't even explain it. It can't be defined any better. Those two things is exactly what this episode did. I will get into the theme. To me, the theme of this episode is freedom. I will get into that later on when we're concluding the program, when we're concluding the podcast. But to me, freedom is the clear theme that defined this episode, that was controlled by D'Angelo, Omar, and also one Jimmy McNulty. Opening scene, Omar is about to be going to the courtroom. He's inside this little room that he's waiting to be called for, waiting for the bailiff to come get him. He's talking to a court officer. The court officer has gotten stuck by a crossword puzzle and can't figure out the answer to it. So Omar, being the helpful one that he is, the Robin Hood that he is, gives the court officer the answer that it was a Greek. Ares was the Greek god, so he helps. So we get another layer of one Omar Devon Little. The bailiff comes and gets Omar. Omar enters the court for the Bird case, and you have Eileen Nathan is asking Omar questions about his occupation, about what he does. So he tells her just flat out. Omar just says flat out, "I robs drug dealers." And she basically says, how does someone who with that type of occupation stay alive and do it as long as you have done it? And this is the exact quote from Omar: day at a time, I suppose. And that would, again, a vintage Omar answer. And then that is the opening scene before we head into our credits. Great opening scene. What were your thoughts on that exchange?
Yeah. This is so a theme for me in this episode is intelligence, or sneaky intelligence, maybe. And so this is showing us a different side of Omar. I'll go sneaky intelligence, but then I also was thinking about just being human. And so you get like these snapshots, which we'll get for other characters later on in the episode or as the episode goes on. But this is a great snapshot of Omar before he was just robbing drug dealers and out on the street, giving you a little bit of insight on give a little bit of insight on his interest and also his level of intelligence.
Yeah, no question. No question about it. Adding to the depth, another layer of his character. And again, and also, which will be a recurring theme when he's been. This is of course this is a setup. It'd be a recurring theme of his just open, his honesty. His honesty. He's completely honest in that scene. As well. We move to the detail. So the detail is discussing the Sabaka case, and you have Daniels, Freeman, Kima, Russell, Prez. So they with Herc and also Herc and Carver. So they're discussing the case, and they figure out that the union is hurt, and the union is hurting for money. That they only had 100 checkers. You heard Russell mention that it was like 300 in the 70s, and of course you're wondering where are. And then they bring up, and this is through they bring up, and this is through police work, that they have not paid off, but donated $70,000 to political connections, and of course you have the question, where in the world are they getting all this money from? And it's B.D. Russell who says, well, maybe it's through through the movement of cans on the ship. So this is of course a setup for scenes to come over the course of the episode. But you can tell that they've been forced to dig deeper in terms of trying to find out what's going on with the checkers. And it tips you off to the fact that Russell is starting to morph into detective. One thing I didn't notice about this scene, the many times that I watched it, I noticed now is how Herc was checking out Russell like the entire scene. And that's one that I did not notice that many times when I watched this. He's checking out basically the entire scene, and then he goes. At the end of the scene, he goes up to her and tries to ask her out. Says, "Want to go out for a cup of coffee?" She puts a coffee cup in his face, basically to say, "Get out of my face." He introduces himself as Thomas and tries to sound, somewhat like a human being compared to how he normally talks. And of course, he gets made mocked by Carver, who messes with him at the end of the scene. But mainly, the main thing to come out of the scene is the fact that they recognize that these guys are dirty, considering how much money that they're tossing around for political connections. What were your thoughts on this scene?
Yeah. I mean, like the Herc scene was nice, comedic relief, but it's all about like we talked about last week. They'll hide big things behind comedy, and they're hiding big things behind like scenes where it feels like, and like you're like what you're talking about, the political connections is the big piece of it. We're going to start to see the depth of the investigation and also the depth of what Frank Sabaka has done.
Omar, Bird, Nathan, Levy, McNulty, and Stringer are all in the courtroom. Omar is being you have McNulty conversating in the back with Stringer. Stringer basically says, word on the street is Omar was nowhere near Gant, nowhere near when Gant got shot. That he didn't witness that at all. He was nowhere close to it as far as proximity. McNulty says, well, we're not on the street. We're in the courtroom. We're in a court of law. Omar identifies Bird and also identifies Bird and his gun. And this is just this is the beginning, not the beginning, but this is really when they start digging into this testimony. Again, there were a few of these court scenes. This is a setup. This was the setup for a further court scene in this episode. But now He's identified the gun. He's also identified Bird. And of course, we all know that he's just absolutely lying through his teeth. But and even despite that fact that he's still convincing in terms of with the initial testimony of identifying Bird as the shooter of William Gann, and as the fact that he saw him kill William Gann. What were your thoughts on this beginning testimony with him identifying Bird and also the McNulty Stringer exchange?
This is a setup for later scene. In terms of like there's a specific layout for how they want the Omar scene to go over, and it hits with an exclamation point, and then it will go into kind of like its finality. But so this is the setup scene for that. What I find equally as interesting as Omar is not telling the truth is that the lawyer and the police know he's not telling the truth in it. And so it's also a statement on the legal system, right? Like it's a statement on how things play out, right? Like, and so Omar, like I said, I'll link it much better once we get to that punctuation that Omar says, because it goes back to this. But this is the beginning of the setup. And so if you look at it as how a lawyer might lay out a legal argument, Omar is going to lay out an argument.
No question about it. You have Nick, Spiros, and a new character that we get into, Eton, who is working with Spiros some more. I don't think he's muscle. I think he's more of a he's a connect. Sergey is the muscle, but Eton is a new character that's working with Spiros. We get introduced to him. They're discussing the chemicals with Nick Sabaka. And also Nick also brings up, he tells him he can get the chemicals, of course, but he also brings up Ziggy's issues with cheese. He asked for their help. And the thing that I think stood out about this scene is Spiro says, hey, you want me to kill this dude? Nick says no, because that would come back on me probably in the future, or that would come back on Ziggy later on, where they would go for revenge and probably and kill Ziggy. Says, go about it another way. Spiros respects Nick's intelligence. Getting back to what you said, the intelligence theme. He respects what Nick said, how Nick wanted to handle the situation. So he agrees to help out Nick with the cheese with cheese. And of course, Cheese burnt up the car and is asking for $5,400 instead of the $2,700 that the car was actually worth. What are your thoughts on this scene?
This is a setup scene. I can connect it once we get to the later scene.
You have Levy, Omar, and Phelan. Levy, of course, is the Barksdale lawyer, cross-examines Omar. He asked Omar a number of questions in terms of, what he does. And he basically tries to come at Omar by saying that you're a parasite. You are out there, you're ripping off drug dealers. You're ripping off drug dealers, and you're contributing to poorly on society. And Omar flips it on him and says, "Just like you." And this throws Levy off guard. He says, "Just like you," and then he says, "You got the briefcase. I got the gun. You got the briefcase. And you got the briefcase all in the game." So he does that. And even before that, he checked Levy about the fact that he says, "I've never put my gun on anybody that wasn't outside the game. That on anybody outside the game." So he checks Levy on that. And then he says, makes that statement. So when Levy says, "So you're immoral," and then he goes into calling him a parasite, and then Omar says, "I got the gun, you got the briefcase, all in the game." And at that point, the courtroom was completely and seemingly everything was in Omar's favor. Even the judge, Phelan, had a look on his face at Levy like, "Well, he's right." That was the look that Phelan had on his face at the end of that particular scene. This scene is one of the signature scenes in the history of the show. If you said to me that this is the greatest scene in the Wire history, I wouldn't have much. It's definitely in the conversation. It's definitely a top 5, top 3 scene in the history of the show, without question. I have plenty to say on it. Go. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, this is the punctuation that I was talking about. And so the argument is laid out, and this is Omar's kind of the final point, but even more importantly, this is the creator's point of the show. Omar's the avatar, all the characters are avatar for what the creators are thinking about this. And so now you put all the scenes together with Omar up until this point. And one, you got him in the very beginning showing how intelligent he is, but because he does what he does, he's completely underestimated and going to be underestimated in the court. This is somebody that Levy would normally eat alive. And so you got that part, and then you got the second part, which is what I was talking about when Omar, I'm connecting both scenes. When Omar was he's smart. Let me connect it back. He's smarter than Levy will ever give him credit for, and this is where he outflanks him and outshines him in this. To your point, this is one of the most powerful, memorable scenes in the entire show. Period. You always remember this scene. The words always echo out, and essentially, the argument that the creators are trying to say is that there is no difference, right? That's why the legal system. That's why I was trying to say that was a turn on the legal system when they're talking about Omar when Omar they know Omar is lying in his testimony, but they're going to use it anyway because they need to get the conviction. This is all part of the game. This is all part of the system. The drug game, the legal system, the cops, all of this is its own organism, and they each need each other to continue moving. And so of course, the statement, "You got the gun, I got the gun, you got the briefcase," is specifically about how Levy is a drug dealer's lawyer. That's his trade. And that he preys on he preys on humanity just as the drug dealers prey on humanity, just as Omar preys on the drug dealers. There is essentially no difference. The only difference is society deems one acceptable and the other not acceptable, until it gets to this point in the trial system where the acceptable side, the law, needs a conviction on this particular defendant, and then all the lines are blurred. And now someone who is completely unacceptable by society becomes completely acceptable to make sure that the legal system gets the person that they're after. It's the point that I made over and over and over again. It's the point that the Wire is making over and over again. There is no difference. There is no difference. There's no good guys. There are no bad guys. This is a product of a very, very broken system, which is being reflected in this country today.
No question about it. Two things about this. Number one, I look at this scene, I thought about, for whatever reason, I thought about 8 Mile, and I thought about B-Rabbit Papa Doc when he strips Papa Doc at the end of the movie of just emasculates Papa Doc with basically calling him out for what he actually is, when Papa Doc is trying to hide what he is in terms of being this gangster rapper. And then he basically says, you know, you came from good parents and you go to a private school, you're not this. And then before he even gets to that point, he says, you know, he tells all of his business. So no longer, it doesn't matter what Papa Doc even says about him after that. He's living his truth. Omar is always living his truth. He doesn't care about what you think about him. He doesn't care about what you think about his sexuality. He is completely free. Even from an institutional standpoint, he's completely free. And what Levy didn't realize is, and this applies to Omar even when he's on the street, he was actually had Levy figured out before Levy can even, before the questions were even done. He had Levy always figured out. And you see Omar on the street, Omar is always scoping the next deal, or he's scoping the next target before they even know it. So I think that was to me the brilliant thing about this scene. Two of the brilliant things about this scene, that, like, to your point, you rarely ever see Omar coming, and he's casing you before you ever even know that he's there. So again, it was just a classic scene that I had to watch. I watched the scene at least 4 or 5 times because it was just a brilliant scene to watch. And Phelan, the last thing, I did have one last thing. Phelan, you talk about Phelan's face. Not only is that, like, yeah, he's right, but that's also like, yeah, I mean, Phelan telling Levy, like, yeah, I know you're a crooked lawyer. So I think Phelan's face exemplified that as well.
Yes, and then I'm going to add on to that. Everybody knows he's a crooked lawyer.
Yes,
it's part of the game. It's part of the system. Part of the game. It's part of the system. Everybody know, like, it's accepted. It's an acceptable part of what is going on.
No question.
And so right. Omar's point is, why am I this and you're that? What's the difference between us?
Absolutely. McNulty and Elena McNulty, she's in her place of business with some home buyers, trying to close down a deal. While you have McNulty playing with undressing a mannequin, playing around while she's there. The customers can't see McNulty, of course. They have their backs turned. And she's gets somewhat distracted. But then as they leave, McNulty asks her out for dinner and a movie. She reluctantly accepts, but makes it clear that this is not going anywhere. I want to emphasize that point. She made it clear that this is not going anywhere. She makes him pay for the sitter, and we'll see how this. And again, this is a payoff. This is a setup for a later scene with them. But she emphasizes the fact that he has it fixated in his mind that they're getting back together. She was defiant in saying that this is not going to happen. What are your thoughts?
This shows how McNulty is as self-involved as he can possibly be. I mean, like, it's a continuation of all the things that we talked about with McNulty. He's not acknowledging her reality. And so she's making it very clear, as you said, what the reality is. He's not acknowledging any reality at this point in time right now.
Not at all. Stringer and a DC contact. Stringer, of course, pays this guy. He's paying this guy to kill D'Angelo. He lets him know that he cannot use any of his people. Can't use any of Stringer's people to do this because, of course, with the Barksdale connection and the DC contact, this guy who's going to facilitate the murder, gets the money. Talk to Stringer about going to a DC club, going to a club in Oxon Hill. But again, this is he says that he has a cousin in the same prison as D'Angelo that does good work. That does good work. So this is of course a setup for a major scene that will take place later on in the episode. And so at this point, Stringer has clearly made up his mind that this is the move that has to be made. We'll talk more about this later on in the episode. What are your thoughts?
This is the first clear indicator that Stringer is fully in charge. And I'll leave it at that because we have to get to the scene, and then we can really, really get into it.
Yes. Charlene and Kima. So Kima and Perez have been assigned earlier in the episode to detail as Daniels had broke off some assignments in terms of what direction that he wanted the case to go into. But Kima and Perez have been assigned to look at the girls that have been coming in to Baltimore. So that were stripping, that were working at the strip clubs. So immediately Kima goes to Charlene, who we know Charlene, who has an award named after her on this program. This is her first appearance since season 1. She's doing well. She's in nursing school, living with, of course, Lester Freeman. But she also is still not connected, but she has contacts still within the world of stripping, and she still has some people there. Kima's asking her about the Russian girls that are in the local strip clubs that have been transported, and she agrees to help Kima. She agrees to help Kima. Of course, this scene is a payoff for a later scene in the episode. What are your thoughts?
Yes, this is a lot of setup. The only thing that I'll add to this is that the Wire plays a very long game, and characters that you might think are gone can pop back up and play a role.
Yes, they can pop back up at any time. Like that'll be a recurring theme over the course of this series that you'll see a factor from season 1 that might not see again to season 3 and what have you. So that's 1,000% right. Nathan McNulty. She tells me Eileen Nathan, of course, who had cross-examined cross-examined Omar. She tells him about the case and about how well Omar did. At first, McNulty was like, it was that bad, but then she tells him, go look at Levy. Levy is clearly frustrated, slamming his briefcase, and she lets McNulty know how well Omar did with the testimony.
Yeah. I mean, this again illustrates all this. This is all about the legal system. This is all about how things happen, and it's masked in joy that they beat Levy, but it's like the entire situation is shady, but it is part of the game. To Omar's point, it's absolutely part of the game. And so, yes, they beat Levy, but they beat Levy in the most Levy way manner.
Yes. So you have Nick and Sergey. Nick is in the car. Sergey has about 2 or 3 guys with him. They go out to the east side where Cheese is at, where Cheese is with a couple of his peoples. They force Cheese by force, pulling guns on him, force Cheese to pay for the car that Ziggy burnt up. And we will later find out who Cheese works for, which will be an important reveal in terms of that connection with the Greeks. But Nick sees how Sergey and the Greeks do business firsthand. As again, they, if you were Nick before this scene, you would think that Cheese, you might be intimidated by Cheese, but he finds out that these guys are stronger and more villainous, if that's a word, than even Cheese is. It shows the power, it shows how much power and pull that they have in terms of how they deal with this particular situation. What were your thoughts?
Yes, this is The Wire's been in this season's been building up towards like this point right now. Up until this point in time, it hasn't been made clear just how the Greeks operate. Like what is their role? How much? Right now we're just talking about like the Port Authority, but it's building with Nick looking at the chemicals, which will pay off in this episode, with the kind of muscle and the things that they carry, and it's juxtaposed by what would be a very tough street crew, and we see that the muscle that they have is more muscle than that very tough street crew. So that starts to give us kind of an idea of who we're dealing with in the Greeks.
Yeah, Cheryl and Kima. Of course, Cheryl is upset that Kima is back in the game and going out to see the strippers. Kima tries to explain to her that this is a part of her job, not going out there to look at girls. But Cheryl is not trying to hear any of this. Cheryl brings up broken promises. She brings up the fact that she feels like she never had a real say in Kima deciding to go back into police work. And again, this will be a scene that will play out not only, of course, throughout this. Well, this scene to me will play out over the course of, I would say, even next season as well, as far as how the disintegration of their respective relationship. Cheryl, by the way, decides to go with her to the strip club. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is about Kima and Cheryl's relationship, and there'll be more to be uncovered around that. This is also, we should acknowledge that this also is part of the investigation strategy, and this is showing how intricate the unit can get and how detailed oriented that they can get. Daniel's laid out the plan, and these are all parts of the plan. Now, with that being said, there's also very, very there are emotional elements to all these scenes, and this is an emotional element to the scene. Even though this is part of the investigation, we know what's Kima's partner name? Cheryl? Cheryl, yeah. We know that Cheryl is not excited that Kima is back in the game.
You have Frank and the Checkers at a union meeting discussing the grain pier and the canal. He discusses the fact that the canal is probably is not going to happen immediately, that they're going to have to continue to fight for that. He also discusses how much money in terms of the money and the resources that they're putting into trying to get the grain pier. And by the way, we know that the grain pier, because we were inside Andy Krawcheck's office, we know that he's turned the grain pier into condos. So Frank is still sold on this idea in his head that, kind of similar to McNulty's, something that's not going to happen, but he's still dead set on it, trying to convince them and maybe convince himself that it's going to happen. Nat, the guy at the end, checks Frank. When they ask him about where he got the money from, he says some timely donations. And then they go about their business. Nat, the bald-headed dude, checks Frank, waits until everybody leaves and tells Frank, you know, you better watch your ass because he knows that that's a bunch of bullshit in terms of getting the money from some timely donations. And then he walks out as well. What were your thoughts on this scene and that him lying to the checkers?
Yeah, I mean, like so again, like, you know, I keep bringing up the Breaking Bad Walter White, and so that's one of those things we call foreshadowing, right? They're foreshadowing what's going on with Frank, and the 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 big part of that is exactly what you said. And when you juxtapose it with what we were talking about in terms of the courtroom is everybody knows they don't have the money. So where's Frank getting the money from? And so it is our first kind of like acknowledgement that it's our first acknowledgement that that this is not the best path for Frank to be on. And that as slick as he thinks he's being, he's not that slick.
Yeah, Daniels, Russell, Bunk, and Freeman are looking at the computer to see which cans are being lost by Sabaka. They realize that there is a pattern of missing cans that's connected to Frank's number two man or one of his close friends in terms of which being Horseface. So their brains, the wheels begin to spin for them on in terms of what to do next in terms of the computer. They have not in terms of what to do with the computer, but again, they look and find a pattern of cans that were being lost by Sabaka and connected to Horseface. Again, this is you have Beatty Russell puts her 2 cents into it as far as and she's morphing into a detective. Yeah, they tell Daniels and they tell Daniels that we have it's a pattern of missing cans, and this is not about Horseface. That's in the later scenes. I got that confused. But they tell Daniels that there's a pattern of missing cans from hundreds of ships. Daniels then looks, like, damn, we have to even go. He has a look on his face like, damn, we're going to even dig deeper in terms of this case. That's that particular scene when they were describing, when they were talking about the missing cans. What were your thoughts?
So last week I was very definitive that it was a dead end, the cans,
Right.
or that section of it was a dead end, which was true. But I knew all this was coming up, and so this is part of the investigation process. This is one of the big reasons why I love The Wire. This is part of the investigation process where they were initially going was a dead end. They got the information. That's when we were going back with what she got about from, what's his name? Haas?
You talking about Horseface?
No. Big guy from last week. Him and Ziggy are always beefing.
Oh, Maui.
Maui. Yeah. Where'd I get? Yeah. Maui. Because that information that he gave her was crucial. And so even though it didn't turn out the way that they wanted it in that moment, they're now going back to the drawing board with the piece of information that they got that they didn't have to now start to extrapolate the information that it's going to be, that where it's going to be. Even right now, Bunk, Freeman, Beatty, Russell have no clue where this is going to go. They just know that they're going to now take this and then start teasing out all the different possibilities of it, which is what a good investigator does.
Team up Prez and Cheryl going to the strip club. Cheryl teases Prez about how nervous he looks. How nervous he is going to the club. questions whether or not he's ever been in a strip club. He doesn't, Prez doesn't want to look at the girls at all. He keeps his head forward while you have Kima just pretend flirting at one of the strippers, just trying to tease, trying to mess with Cheryl. They talk to one of the friends that Sardine knew. Sardine told told this girl that they were coming to ask questions. She's one of the veterans there. She tells them how these girls are being brought into the club, how they're being monitored by the muscle. These girls basically are prisoners. They're not, they have basically security around them all the time. And they also are hurting the business as far as other from local girls, except her, she says, because she clearly has some established clientele and she's been in a while. But saying that a lot of girls around the club are getting jealous of these girls taking their business. And she basically gives a number of rules that if a girl gets too close to a John, she gets shipped off. If one of the girls tried to run away, she got tasered. So you get a sense of the Greeks running a tight ship when it comes to these girls and how much under control they are. They are under the watch of the muscle that's around them. What were your thoughts on this scene?
Yes. So everything you said accurate. And then I'll add on. This again, like this is showing Daniel's plan coming to fruition and also showing the investigative prowess of this team. As we stated last week, the Wire is showing another side, like not just street drug investigation, but that this is an investigative unit. So this is showing the intelligence of Daniels and the intelligence of his team and how they can juggle a lot of different things at one time. And so while Daniels has said that he didn't want to touch the murder investigation, all this is eating around the edges of that. So he's managing two things at once. One, he is following, he's put in a plan for his team to follow the threads that they have, and he is pulling gently on the thread of the murder, the girls in the can.
No question about it. Then we go to D'Angelo, who's in his cell, which is a nice cell. It was a very nice prison cell with a toilet. He's looking at his son's picture, and he then proceeds to flush some drugs down the toilet. Of course, we'll see plenty of D'Angelo later on in this episode. Any quick thoughts on that, which was mainly just set up in terms of where his head is at?
Yes, but this is you're right. It's set up for where his head is at. Yeah, we'll leave it right there because we'll get into it.
You have Freeman and Russell looking at the computers and also looking at paperwork. Again, very quick scene, but with certainly a lot of setup on what's going to transpire over the course of this episode. Kima and Cheryl. So Kima takes Cheryl. They've left the strip club. Kima shows and describes how the girls died in a can. She shows her the can. Tries to, again, I guess I'm assuming she's trying to convince her this is why I needed to work this case. Cheryl, still didn't look convinced. I mean, Cheryl had this blank look on her face. It's not like Cheryl didn't say anything. But Kima is describing, telling her, these girls died in that can and suffered and what have you. But Cheryl had this blank look on her face as if she still wasn't convinced that Kima should be out there doing this investigation. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, this is more about the dynamic of where Kima is at. right now. She's in her happy space, and her happy space is Cheryl's unhappy space, very unhappy space. And so I think like we talked about like how this will be a dynamic that will play out over the rest of the season and into next season. The reason that this dynamic plays out like that is because all of this is showing how inevitable it is that Kima, or how much Kima loves this work and how that is not going to connect her and Cheryl.
We have Phelan, Levy, and Bird. Phelan, Bird gets sentenced to life. Levy tries to ask for some bail, and he just basically gets rebuffed by Phelan. Phelan's like, you gotta be kidding me. He jokes he kind of taunts Bird, saying, ask him, are you Jesus Christ? And Bird just has no answer for that, says, excuse me, and then he says, yeah, you're not. So then he gets convicted of the murder, and it's going to be, and gets sentenced to life. We then see Nathan give Omar a get out of jail free card up into aggravated assault. Hey, don't forget about that. That will play a role down the line. So just file that away. That get out of jail free card that Nathan gives Omar. Of course, Bird yells at Omar coming out the court. Omar taunts Bird. Then McNulty asked Bird if he really saw, not asked Bird, McNulty asked Omar if he really saw Bird shoot Gant, and Omar looks at McNulty and says to McNulty, what do you think? And that's how that scene ends. What were your thoughts?
Setup scene.
Yeah. It's definitely a lot. It's, with that get out of jail free card, to me is probably the key to that scene. You think about it moving forward, but we'll talk about that over.
Yeah.
We won't talk about that anytime soon, but that just remember that.
Yeah,
Setup. Just remember that.
Wire plays a deep game.
Yes. D'Angelo and his book club. So they're in prison. They're in the prison library discussing The Great Gatsby. There's about 6 or 7 inmates, and D'Angelo immediately has a connection with the main character, basically saying that it doesn't matter how you portray yourself now, your past, you can't run away from your past, and it will always catch up with you. And he says the epigraph, don't matter if some fools say he's different. We also see the teacher in there is Richard Price. If you know, Richard Price is one of the writers of The Wire who started writing for The Wire in season 3. He also wrote Clockers, that was made into a movie by Spike Lee. Very popular novelist, to say the least. You were a journalist, lit major, and I'm sure you read The Great Gatsby.
Yep.
What were your thoughts in terms of that connection with D'Angelo and
just set me up. This is going to be for a second. This spoke to my heart. I couldn't love this scene any more than anything in The Wire. It is essentially summing up D'Angelo's character while simultaneously summing up pretty much every character in The Wire. Every character you see and identify at some type of torment, right? Like it sets up Avon, it sets up Stringer, it sets up McNulty, it sets up Freeman, it sets up Presbeluski, it sets up Ziggy, it sets up Sabaka, it sets up, go on and on and on and on and on. And essentially what he's saying is that, and pretty much him and Omar are just kind of like playing ping pong with this idea. This entire episode is that you are who you are, and no matter what stories you make up, it doesn't matter, because what matters is the actions that you carry and the actions that you do. That's what happens with people. And so in his point with The Great Gatsby, it's all about how we put on these facades, how these characters put on facades. And the facades are supposed to represent who we are. If we bring it into today's culture, it's about Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, You put on your best self you put on all these glossy fronts in front of people, but that has nothing to do with what's going on inside of you. And essentially what he's saying in that is that that he can no longer not be who he is. When he was, if I connect it back to last season, when he was about to take that deal from the police, he just said, I want to get out of here, be anybody else, do anything else. And that was essentially the deal that he was going to take. Right now, he's at the realization of that. If I am going to do this for any amount of time, I can't hold on to this hope and this dream that I'll get out of here and go back into the game. I have to be who I am. I have to stand on my own 2 feet. And that is essentially where he ends. That's essentially the complete arc of his character. Other characters have to complete that journey. McNulty's will take a little bit of time. Freeman's will take a little bit of time. We'll see Sabaka over the course of this season. We'll see Ziggy over the course of this season. But this is, he's essentially completed his arc of his character. When we first met D'Angelo, he was somebody else. He was pretending to be something. And right now, in this desolate space, in this room full of criminals, in the library, he's actually found who he is. So even though we'll get to what happens at the end, he's actually completed a fantastic character arc that has him in full acknowledgement of who he is. Stringer's not there right now. Avon's not there. McNulty's not there, just to name some big ones. And so he's actually in a much better place than them, regardless of what happens. He's at peace with who he is. Now, to the overall structure of The Wire, what he is commentating on is the falsehood of everything. And that links back to what we were talking about in terms of this game that everybody is playing. Nobody is who they are. So we identified Omar as having a ton more of intelligence and a ton more of opportunity that was there, but because of the world, he could not go that route or was not able to go that route. Sabaka, we talked ad nauseum about who he is presenting himself to be and who he actually is. We identified it with Levy, and we identified it with the entire legal system. And so essentially, what they are saying is that this is a facade. Everybody's putting on a mask. This entire thing is a mask. And the only way to unmask yourself is to be honest with who you are. And part of being honest with who you are is acknowledging where you came from. So many characters in this show, I would argue that when we talk about Herc, I would argue when we talk about Daniels, I would argue when we talk about a lot of other characters, just in this episode, are giving you flickers of their imagined selves. And in order to fully realize yourself, you have to be honest with who you are. And the characters who are honest with who they are and are rooted in that, no matter how hard the outcome happens, are the ones who will ultimately win, even if the outcome looks very painful. And so this is one of those thesis statements, thesis arguments, thesis statement and argument for the entire show. It is a brilliant scene. It is fantastically acted. It is beautifully written. This is where it is essentially a novel. There are two scenes where I can think of in the entire episodic run of The Wire, where when I was watching it, it is like I was reading a very I mean, like, I don't want to use the word Shakespearean just because I'm just not in that mode right now, but a tragedy. Also, that gets us back to the Greek of Omar. Anyway, so many connections right now. But this is where it plays like an absolute tragedy. And when they nail it, oh my God, they nail it, and they nailed it in this scene.
Yeah, so I've never read the Great Gatsby. Haven't even seen the movie, DiCaprio. But what I came away from this is I think he's talking about, he's connecting himself with the character, but he also, I think, has gotten to a point to where he feels that this being in jail is where he belongs and what he deserves based on some of the things that he has been a part of with the Barksdales, based on some of the things that he has done. Even though we don't view him as a pure killer, he's done some bad things when he's with the Barksdales, at the behest of the Barksdales. So I think that he is accepting of the fact that of actually doing the 20 years. So that's what I took away. That's why I took away from it. To add on to what you just said, we have Bunk, Freeman, Russell. This is comedy. Bunk was throwing. They're looking at the Freeman looking at the computers. Russell looking through some paperwork, and Bunk is throwing a tennis ball. It's like a child, continuously throwing a tennis ball up into the point to where he hits Freeman, and he says "my bad," and then the scene ends. This will be a setup for another scene. Any thoughts on this quick scene?
Yeah, big time thoughts. Again, what The Wire's doing now is hiding comedy, or hiding a big development behind the veneer of comedy. What's Freeman doing this entire time? That Bunk's bouncing that ball.
Oh, Freeman's looking at the computer for paper.
Why is he looking at the computer?
He's probably making that connection with the Sabakas.
What does Freeman do?
Oh, he investigates. That's what he's a pure investigator. Freeman's
in the process of investigating, as we know. I don't want to give too much away, because I'm trying to think that happens next episode where he talks about what he's doing in this time. So Bunk effectively is bored right now. Freeman's not bored because he's in the nitty-gritty beginnings of the investigation process that's going to bear out fruit. And so, yeah, it's funny that Bunk is bouncing that ball, but Bunk right now is what it's meant to show is that Bunk isn't seeing value at just staring at a computer screen. Right. Freeman's seeing a lot of value at staring at that computer screen. And by staring at that computer screen and doing what he does, it's going to bear major, major, major fruit. And so, yeah, it's funny, but there's a lot in that scene.
Yeah, Bunk, so to that point, Bunk, they know as a whole that they as a detail, for the most part, that they're going to have to dig deeper to go further in this investigation. Bunk is trying to avoid that.
Nope.
Bunk is avoiding that right now at this point.
He's bored.
He's bored, right? Yeah, he's bored, but
he can't see what Freeman sees.
Okay.
You just can't see it. That's not how Bunk investigates. He's murder police.
Yes.
Freeman investigates differently, as we will find out and as we've already seen. But this season is the one that really brings that out. How Freeman looks at things and how he investigates. but him and Presbeluski have already shown it in last season, is that Freeman they both have a nose for the trail, paper trail or any other trail that is out there. And so this is the beginning parts of it. Left to their own devices, and this is why I was saying last week was a little bit of a dead end. When Sabaka tells them that, when Sabaka tells Bunk and B.D. Russell that, hey, I did the computer system, Bunk kind of rolls his eyes like, and that is a dead end effectively for them. If they didn't have this investigative unit, that would have been enough to stonewall the investigation, the traditional investigation. Just like last year with the drugs and with the street, they don't know that this unit exists. No one else knows the collection of intellect that is there and how they're going to use this. And so because Freeman's there and because he's willing to dig in the way, he's going to create fresh leads.
Yeah, no, that was his, like, similar to Kima being her wheelhouse. This is Freeman's wheelhouse with this paper trail and digging deep in terms of investigation. And you see, again, B. Russell is learning from Freeman, so she's into the paperwork as well, even though she, at the beginning of this was not a detective.
She's also there like we're not at the point where Daniels came up. No, we're not there. I'll speak more. I'll speak more about it.
That's it.
Yeah.
So we have McNulty and his partner off the boat. He tells his partner, McNulty is staring at the picture of the girl. Then he tells his partner that he is retiring. Quick scene, but any thoughts on this scene?
Set up.
Yep. Nick, Sergey, Prop Joe. Nick and Sergey go to Prop Joe's shop, which of course is his shop where he fixes clock is a front, of course, a drug front where he fixes clocks and things like that. It says, John's, shop. He forces Cheese to pay out. He pays out Nick $2,400. And we make the connection that not only Cheese works for Prop Joe, but the Greeks and Prop Joe have a relationship that will be vital to the show moving forward. What were your thoughts on this scene?
First of all, just a very cool scene. Just a very cool scene. Every time I see it, I'm just like, this is a very cool scene. There's a lot of flexing that's going on all sides, but also a very well understood business relationship. A lot of respect that's also in there. Wait, am I talking about the wrong scene?
No, you good.
If I am, I'm talking about the right scene, right? Okay,
you're good.
Okay. You got me worried. Just those 2 points. This is now the scene where it is kind of really unveiled how the Greeks are moving in this world and what is happening. We know what Prop Joe is talking about with that other thing.
Yes.
But at that point in time, even if you don't know, it's something bigger, because it's like this thing. He's just like, nah, hold on, we'll talk business later. Now this thing. So, and we know Prop Joe's position via the basketball game with Avon in season 1. So we can start to kind of connect all these dots and these pieces about what the Greeks do and what is actually their position in this world. And then you tie it in to their connection with the docks, and the police are investigating the docks. Now you can start to really kind of see where things are headed, how interconnected all of this is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool scene, very cool scene.
Yeah, and you see, you see why Prop Joe is number one, is a kingpin, knowing, understanding the big picture. Because Ziggy fucked up the package, and he says, I had to pay for this. So, but once Sergey, so he does not, he'll pay out the $20 because she's going to pay him, but he's not going to do anything to jeopardize the relationship with the queen. Like he's not he's not going to do that, even if he has a point in terms of how it went down and everything with Ziggy fucking up the package at the beginning and what have you. Because he realizes she's fucked up as well in terms of doubling the amount, trying to extort Ziggy by doubling the amount of the car and burning the car as well. He did not have to burn the car. So Pop Joe, says, okay, he'll have to pay me back. We both have some similarities in dealing with some fucked up family. You and your cousin, me and some of my folks who he jokes that I can't. It's not like I could shoot him during Thanksgiving dinner. He says, family's family. So gives you a little bit more insight on how Pop Joe does business and how forward thinking that he is. He's all about the business. He's not gonna fuck up. He's not petty at all. He's not. So, like to your point, it was a dope scene to watch. Those two interact. McNulty and Doc Frazier. So McNulty has given up on looking for the girl. Doc Frazier says you did all you could. She's going to become a cadaver. Well, she is a cadaver. She's going to become, going to donate it for, body parts and what have you. So she's going to get sent away to the Anami board. That's what I want to say. She's going to get sent away to the Anami board. And you see, Frazier basically says, it's a wrap on this from that standpoint. And McNulty concedes that by, I think did he tear up the picture? I don't think he tore up the picture in this scene.
Put it in his pocket.
Yeah, he folded the picture up and put it in his pocket. What were your thoughts?
This now concludes McNulty's giving him something else to do. He's going to now come into the story, the main story. This concludes his side quest. You know what I thought?
Yeah, I know the whole
thing. Yeah. So it concludes it. It ends it.
So
the plot device is over. Now we can get now we need to get McNulty back into the main story.
Yep. D'Angelo and Brianna meeting in the prison. Powerful scene. Brianna is trying to convince D'Angelo to work with Avon so he can get years taken off his sentence. He basically rebuffs that and says he needs to go his own way. He tells her a childhood story where he was getting beat up by some twins, and she refused to let him inside and basically made him fight him, even though that these twins were basically bullying him every day. And she would not let him in the house until he fought back. He continuously tells her he needs to go his own way and stand up for himself. He says, tell Avon, Stringer, Donette to leave him be. You see, then we see some foreshadowing. Another inmate look at D'Angelo during that scene. It was quick, but it was, you could tell it wasn't quick enough to where it was noticeable. So remember that. But this is goodbye. This is goodbye from a standpoint that, not to say that he didn't know he was going to die, she didn't know he was going to die, but this is goodbye from a standpoint of Brianna Barksdale knows that they will never be a family again as they once were in terms of the Barksdales. And I think that obviously she wants him out of prison because he's her son, but she realizes that it's a wrap in terms of the Barksdales being a family as a whole. Powerful scene. They both all the scenes that she's in, she destroys, even especially with him. What are your thoughts?
I can't talk about the scene until we get to the end.
Okay. Bunk and Freeman. This time you have Bunk sitting down, and Freeman is throwing a tennis ball to annoy Bunk, and he hits Bunk. He hits Bunk with the tennis ball. Bunk gets up and walks away and says, fuck this, I'm going to get a drink. To your point, Bunk was not about doing that tedious police work. He really didn't need Freeman to hit him with a tennis ball for him to get a drink, to be honest with you.
Freeman was getting his get back on him.
Yeah, that was his get back. Any thoughts on this?
It same thing of what we said about the other scene.
Frank, yes. Frank at the bar with the checkers. The checkers are telling old funny stories about one of the old checkers. You see Nick come in. Nick gives Ziggy the money that he got for the car, and even despite that, Ziggy still complains about the amount, which is really typical Ziggy. Then Frank buys a drink for the bar, for the checkers at the bar. Ziggy sees this. He pulls out $100 bill and buys a drink for the bar. Then he pulls out another $100 bill and burns it right in front of everybody on the bar top. What were your thoughts?
Ziggy,
your guy.
Yeah.
Not to be outdone by Pops.
This is gonna set up the scene him and his father have.
Yep.
Anyways, we'll get there.
Okay.
But which is very closely related to D'Angelo and his mom scene.
Absolutely. Powerful scene. Russell and Freeman, they're looking at the computers. They count how many cans that Horseface has oversaw. That has overseen. Freeman, tells Russell. Russell asks about Bunk, and Freeman tells Russell that Bunk is getting drunk. So some of the payoff from the investigation that Freeman was doing as far as studying and digging deeper into the case is starting to pay off in terms of seeing how many cans that Horseface moved, how many cans were moved that Horseface oversaw. And anybody that doesn't remember Horseface, of course, he's the guy that stole the surveillance van from Bowcheck, if you don't remember, because we know it's a lot of characters. What were your thoughts?
Set up.
Yeah. McNulty and Bunk. McNulty and Bunk are both getting drunk. Bunk especially is getting lit. They start discussing the case. Bunk pulls out his gun, starts fake shooting. McNulty tells Bunk that he and Elena are getting back together. This, according to McNulty, of course, Elena has nothing. Elena, we know, is not down for this, so she tells him that we're getting. He tells Bunk that he and Elena are getting back together, and he also told him that he was retiring too. I think he said that in this scene as well, but he definitely told him that he was getting back together with Elena. What are your thoughts on this scene?
So going back to D'Angelo's point, McNulty's saying things he wants to be true, not acknowledging the reality of the situation. And so he's full on in his mask.
Ziggy and Frank. So Frank and Ziggy walk out the bar. Frank says, "Let's take a walk." After watching Ziggy burn the $100 bill in front of everybody, he asks Ziggy where he got the money from. Ziggy doesn't tell him exactly. Ziggy proceeds to say, "If you want to hit me, go ahead." He talks to Ziggy about the bruises that are on his face that came from cheese. Ziggy says, I fell down. He says, Frank says, how many times? And then they get into some family shit where Frank is regretful in terms of basically saying he should have listened to Ziggy's mom and had Ziggy had Ziggy go to community college. Ziggy says, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And then Ziggy starts to get into some of the stuff that he grew up on, listening to old doc stories and also family, family arguments and what have you. This scene gave you some clear insight to what the dynamic of their relationship is and why Ziggy is the way he is. Also, the thing that stood out to me as they're walking and talking is that the clear disconnect between a father and son. Like, you could tell that these guys don't really communicate a lot, that they don't really know each other. I mean, there's a clear disconnect. It didn't even sound like a father and son were having a conversation, to be honest with you. Like, so that to me jumped out of how just, how removed they are from each other's lives from that standpoint. What were your thoughts?
You can't talk about this scene without talking about the D'Angelo and his mom scene. Both of them have the same exact tone and have the same exact kind of outcome. This was potentially a chance for Sabaka to acknowledge his son and where he was, and he couldn't get over what he was about and what was happening with him. Same with D'Angelo's mom. That's what D'Angelo's story was all about. What he's saying to his mom in that prison jail cell is that I needed you. I needed you to be a mom, not a pit boss, not the, consigliere or whatever of this family. I needed you to be my mom. And that's what Ziggy's saying to his dad, or that's what Sabaka is that's what Ziggy's saying underneath everything that is going on. He needs a dad, not Sabaka, king of the docks or whatever, or king of the local, president of local. He needs a father right now, somebody who cares, not somebody who's going to talk about like the regrets of what happened in the past, but somebody who's going to look at Ziggy and look at Ziggy for what he is, going back to D'Angelo's point, and acknowledge who he is, acknowledge where they were, and then deal with the reality of the situation. Not I wish I would have talked to your mother about community college or whatever he wants to bring up at this point in time. And so both of those scenes are heart-wrenching and gut-wrenching because one, we'll see the definitive outcome at the end of this one, and then the other, we'll see the definitive outcome at the end of the season. So what I was alluding to when I was talking about like different plays is what Ziggy represents, what D'Angelo represents, are very tragic figures, and that plays into what the Greeks and the Romans, Shakespearean, like all that stuff. That's what they like to play out, and that's what I was gonna say good writers. That's what Western writers, writers who grew up, and I'm the same way because I came through that exact same educational system that really propped up that type and that style of storytelling. And so you can tell there's a lot of love for these characters because they give them these moments to kind of expound on the tragedy of each character. Like I said, Ziggy, they made it as easy as the writers made it as easy. Writers, directors, creators made it as easy as pie, and the actor as well made it as easy as pie to look at Ziggy and say, oh, there's the self-destructive, he's just going to do wild Ziggy stuff. But right here, they're giving you the idea of essentially what, again, D'Angelo laid out, that there's no other path for him because of where he came from. And that's the tragedy of it all. There's no other path for D'Angelo because of where he came from. And that's the tragedy of it all.
No question about it. We have Daniels, Russell, Bunk, and Freeman. They are discussing the disappearing cans that were on a horse's watch. Freeman says that there is no paper trail and that there is no paper trail. Bunk asked Daniels to combine investigations, which again, in terms of eating the 14 murders, which for the second time, again, Daniels rebuffs and because he does not want to be responsible if the case doesn't get solved, of course. And Freeman, we see the payoff from the previous scenes. Freeman decides that it's time to clone the computer and watch the docs in real time. What were your thoughts?
Boom. That's it. That's the fruits. That's the fruits. That's the fruits. He is beginning the process of showing how they're going to be able to essentially get the wire up on the computer. This is the fruits of it. That's why he was staring at the computer the entire time.
You have Avon and D'Angelo are in the hallway going in opposite directions, which, was, I think, apropos. Avon calls D'Angelo's name. D'Angelo does not respond, but does turn around and look at him and just gives him a look, basically, that says, I'm not fucking with you, that we're done. Gives him that look and walks away. So Avon calls his name twice. Again, no response from D'Angelo, just a look, and then Avon, then they both proceed to walk away. What are your thoughts?
Can't talk about that until we get to the end.
McNulty and Elena, they're having dinner, and she goes after him with insults on his cheating and about the job. She says, I don't know where it comes from, but he says, you have a right to be angry. He completely lies and says, I'm changing as far as not drinking as much and what have you, just because he wasn't drinking at the dinner. She was trying to say, she says, where's the Jameson? Where's the other liquor that you normally drink? He says, I'm not, I'm calming down from it. He asked for another chance in terms of getting back together. She says, how about, a fuck for the road? And, and then, then of course they have sex. Again, and then we'll see how this concludes in regards to, because they have one more scene together. But what were your thoughts with this exchange?
This is McNulty keeping on that mask that D'Angelo was talking about. None of the actual stuff matters, like in terms of whatever was the outcome of all of that. The point is that McNulty is nowhere near what he's trying to present he is. And of course, the person who knows him, his ex-wife or separated wife at this point in time, sees right through whatever words that are coming out of his mouth, because it's about your actions. You don't change just by saying you change. You actually show that you change. And then on top of that, it wasn't insults that she was hurting on. She was telling him of past hurts, past traumas. Right. And that's where that anger was coming from. Right. And so in order to get to the place that he wants to be, he would have to, acknowledge that he really hurt her. And that's not anything that McNulty's in a place to do at this point in time in the show.
Spiros, Nick, and Johnny 50. So Nick gets the chemicals to Spiros. Spiros offers to pay Nick in heroin. Then Ziggy says, "Hey, if we accept this offer, we can basically double, maybe even triple our profits." Nick decides to take half of the money in heroin and half in cash. And then Ziggy tries to again try to get involved with the deal making and the business aspect. And Nick basically tells him to fuck off. I got it. Johnny 50 wants no part of the heroin aspect of it. He walks, as soon as that conversation started, he immediately walks away from that. He's not willing to go that far. But you have, again, Nick telling Ziggy, I got it. You go, he said, what did he say? He told him to go watch cartoons. So again, that I want you to emphasize to the audience, pay attention to those, to Ziggy continuously getting disrespected, because it adds up. So now, in Ziggy's mind, he probably thought he proposed a good idea as far as, tripling the prices and things of that nature, giving Nick that idea. But Nick says, you know what, I got it. Don't need you from that standpoint. What were your thoughts on the Spiros offer and Nick's exchange with?
Yeah, I'm in a certain space with this because of the Great Gatsby, because of that scene with D'Angelo, and so I've said Nick's trajectory in previous episodes of where he's going because of the desperate straits he's in and what choices that he proves and what model that Frank Zabaka sets for all of that. But honestly, in this scene right here, this is more about what is going on with Ziggy. It's not about the insults. It honestly is not about the insults. I can't go down that road because this episode laid it out. Like, for real, laid it out. It's not about the insults. It's not about anything. It's about the mask. Ziggy's trying to be somebody he's not. And that's why I said, now I'm going to get really deep. Like, up to this point in time, I've allowed just kind of like just Ziggy to be like, da-da-da, but this is why I love this character. It's so tragic. And we got it, like, no surface stuff. I'm off the surface stuff with Ziggy completely. He's put on that mask. Because he can't go back to where he's from, because his father won't let him, he now needs to find his way in the world. He can't find his way in this world because he can't identify who he is. His father won't let him access that. And so he keeps putting on these different masks. And of course, none of these masks fit him. That's what we're seeing with Ziggy every single time. He's trying to be something. Buys another drink like Frank does. Tries to deal drugs like White Mike, like everything. There'll be a line where he says in future episode, where I'll come back to this, where he specifically says it to I believe Nick. It might have been Frank, but I believe it's Nick. But Ziggy is floundering at this point in time, and he's floundering because he doesn't have anybody that can support him. And the only way he can support himself is by pretending. And that's going to run out.
We get to the final scene. D'Angelo and the hitman, who of course is the cousin to the DC contact that's been hired for this. D'Angelo, of course, is in charge of the books. He checks. There's a book that's been damaged. He tells the guy, tells one of the guys that, I'll check for some tape or something in the back, in one of the back book rooms. He goes in the back. The guy sees, the hitman sees him, or one of the prisoners sees him, follows him inside the book room, pretends as if he needs some help with a book, and as D'Angelo has his back turned, he is strangled by the guy. The guy, of course, is much bigger than D'Angelo, physically overpowers him. And he sets it up to make it seem as if D'Angelo killed himself. And that is how the episode ends, with the door being closed, with the shot of the door that D'Angelo is behind. What are your thoughts?
that's so many thoughts. All right, let's try to do this in a way that doesn't take an hour. So the actual what happens in the scene is not important. It is like I said, his arc was closed after that statement. Everything else that happens just makes it more tragic. The final conversation with his mom and his eventual death. But he closed his arc with that conversation. This honestly is more about Stringer. This action right here is more about Stringer, because Stringer makes a move that he knows Avon will be against. And if Avon was in the position where Avon thinks he is, then Stringer would never be able to make this move. And so this is about Stringer in a very tangible move for the audience, announcing he's the top dog in the organization without question. This is the announcement that he's the top dog in the organization. When I yeah, and then I'll end it at that. That's correct.
So yeah, few things on this. Number one, D'Angelo goes out. There was a line in the movie Panther by Huey P. Newton, one of the co-founders of the Black Panther Party. Good movie, by the way. Check it out if you get a chance to. It says, I'd rather die on my I'd rather die on my feet. I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. D'Angelo goes out like that. He goes out dying on his feet. He is no longer beholden to the Barksdales, because you think about D'Angelo could have easily got the year shaved off, and probably asked Avon to be released from the Barksdales completely. Could have did that. And as we will see in future episodes, Avon doesn't have a major problem with letting people go, let alone his family member. But D'Angelo got to a point to where he got to a point of honesty and in the polar opposite of McNulty, that he felt like no, in order for me to be completely free, I gotta do this time. He stands up to the Barksdales, he stands up to Stringer, stands up to everybody, even his own mother, stands up to everybody that's been telling him to do the wrong thing for years upon years upon years. It takes a lot of courage. And I say this because there were a number of people on the internet, wireheads, who criticizing D'Angelo, saying, yeah, you should have listened to Avon, should have got the years taken off, and what have you. Like, no. You're missing. If you say that, then you're missing the point of his story arc, and you're missing where he's at as a character. He is free. Even in jail, he died free. Okay. So from that standpoint, that, and again, brilliant performance probably overall. We know Larry Gilliard was a beast in his season and a half in The Wire. As far as Stringer goes, and I've been thinking about this a lot, with his killing of D'Angelo. It absolutely is a power move. To your point, it is stripping off another layer of the Barksdales. Even though D'Angelo is no longer connected to the drugs or connected in terms of doing what he was doing in season 1, he's still a Barksdale. So that's one less Barksdale. Okay, that's one less Barksdale that's on the board now. I think it's easy. We know why Stringer did this, not only to show power, but also the fact that he was fearful that D'Angelo would snitch on him. But I just wondered about the standpoint. I wondered about the vetting process. It's not like like he kept asking he kept asking Avon over and over, what's up with D'Angelo? What's up with D'Angelo? Then he asked Donette, what's good with D'Angelo? So to me, I can't simply say he wanted to kill D'Angelo from the beginning. There was a vetting process of that decision. So I thought about that, and I want to pose this question to you. Last episode, when he had his conversation when Stringer was speaking to Avon, and Avon said, that boy got to find his own way. Did Avon tip? Did Stringer misread that in terms of killing D'Angelo? Did he misread Avon's emotion and Avon's answer? Not saying that Avon gave the hit to D'Angelo, we know that, but does Stringer, because Stringer's gonna have a habit of misreading body language and misreading people over the course of this episode, over the course of this series. I'm just gonna let you know without spoilers. Stringer is not good. That's one thing this is one of the reasons why he's not a good number one or a kingpin. Did he misread Avon in that scene last week?
What did we say about that scene last week, RIL?
Oh, that Stringer had all the power.
What was he doing? You said it.
What, that he was what? I forgot what I said.
Forgot what you said? Okay. Well, he was reading Avon for weakness. That's what we said. And he saw that Avon was weak.
Right.
So that answers your question right there.
Yeah, no, I mean, no, to your point, yeah, this definitely was a power move for Stringer. I get why Stringer did this. To me, it was a power move. It also was a business move as well. Stringer's operating from a mindset of strictly business. D'Angelo, even beyond the fact that D'Angelo can bring down the whole organization if he were to snitch, D'Angelo is a asset that has no value to Stringer's world at this point.
And that's the point. He has no value. This is a power move. Strictly, he did it because he could, and he did it to show that it's the same thing. Brandon left for the street. He's doing it. It's unstated, but it's stated. It's unstated, but it's stated. It's a power move. If Avon is who Avon is, does D'Angelo get killed? Just in general, like we see this. Avon runs the prison, correct? Avon can make these moves and this move, and the prison yard stops when he walks across it. If Avon is powerful, can anybody get to D'Angelo? And the answer to that is no. It's just no. So what this says is,
well, I mean,
Avon's not powerful. We're not arguing this point. We're just not arguing this point. What this says is that Stringer's more powerful than Avon. He can kill D'Angelo. And Avon can't do anything to stop him. It's just that simple.
Yeah, but Avon does have power in the prison. I think it was just a well-conceived plan.
But that's what I'm saying. If he had as much power, so who's more powerful? That's why I say it's strictly a power. You're absolutely right. He does have power in the prison. And still Stringer can do this.
Yeah. Stringer is the guy at this point. There's no question about it.
This is that announcement of it.
That he's the guy at this point. Very. You look back at the D'Angelo character. There was he in the book. Not way down the hole. That's the podcast. The book, All the Pieces Matter by Jonathan Abrams. Stringer, D'Angelo was surprised by his death of the character. Was surprised by his death on the show. Remember season 1, he basically was a co-lead along with McNulty. And you can check it out if you want. Check it out. It's a very good book on terms of the backstories of The Wire. That's what it's filled with, a bunch of backstories and character and flushing out of the characters in on the show. But he did not see it coming. As far as he was surprised by the fact that his character was killed. Said, basically, to paraphrase, he said it was something that hadn't been seen on television during that particular time, where you saw main characters or co-leading characters get killed on the show. Even though this show was more of an ensemble cast, D'Angelo was still one of the starring characters, and he was the first starring character to die on this show. In terms of, he was up until this point, he was the biggest star to get killed. Up until this point, we know what will happen later on in the seasons. But again, he died a free man. He died a free man. You see Omar being free to be who he was, and you saw McNulty, who is not free, is kind of trapped in his own world of not, to your point, trapped in his own world, not willing to call himself out for what he really is. So this episode was dictated by those three characters. MVP and Sardine Award. My MVP for this episode was D'Angelo.
Same. I'll just announce it right with you.
And my best performance was Omar.
Same.
Okay.
Yep. It's yep. Part of me wanted to give Omar the MVP, but D'Angelo.
D'Angelo.
He crushed this episode. This is a D'Angelo episode. I mean, they gave him the episode and he crushed it. So there, you can't. Nope. Omar will have his time. Trust us. He will have his time. His time is coming. But this was D'Angelo. You couldn't. Nope. I couldn't. I tried. Not even I tried. I debated in my head for a quick second. Now I was like, nah, D'Angelo's too much, too good in this episode. Gotta give it to him. And it has nothing to do with the death. He was just really good in this episode.
No, they both. No, he was tremendous. I mean, they both were tremendous in this episode. But yeah, D'Angelo, in every scene, even the scene where he didn't say anything to Avon, was tremendous. Was tremendous to say the least. Great episode. A lot of moving pieces, and again, it only will get better from here as far as some of the payoffs in terms of the plot. Stringer is the guy. He is the guy right now. He's definitely out unequivocally number one. And we'll see the weight. We'll see how he deals with the weight of that.
Yep.
Again, it was that, the D'Angelo move was strictly a business move. Now, you could say, a questionable business move by killing the nephew of your boss. And we'll see how that plays out. But it was without question. It was no question that this was a business related move. And again, stripping off another layer of what the Barksdales were. Great episode. Any last thoughts?
Yes, I'm gonna let you live on that comment. But the thing that you have to appreciate about The Wire is how long of a game they play, right? Because they're sowing seeds right now for the end of season 3.
Yes.
So that's my last thought. You just gotta appreciate it.
They are constantly they're constantly playing the long game. And they are constantly playing the long game. That's the brilliance. That is the brilliance of the show. So I'm definitely gonna appreciate that aspect of the show. That's gonna wrap it up for this edition of The Wire Remix. season 2, episode 6. This will be up. I'll probably try to get this up before midnight. As always, thanks to Rob Sapp for joining the program.
All right, sir. Everyone stay safe, stay healthy, stay cool, and now stay dry.
Yeah. All right, take it easy, man.
Later.
That's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I will see you, tomorrow. We'll do a lot of NBA, a lot of Major League Baseball as well. And of course, next week with the Wire episode 7 backwash. I'm out.